So C Squared, this is kind of college hangout meets Jesus. That's the tagline that we kind of use. We kind of combine music and ministry to kind of do a little hybrid of the two. And so I talk for a little bit, and then our artists kind of do their thing. And so we understand if you were like, whoa, wait a minute, I just came here for the music, you tricked me. Like, we don't want anybody to feel like that at all. So seriously, we won't look at anybody weird if somebody were to stay. But yeah, so let's rock and roll. I was kind of doing some business with God the other day. I was like, God, what's the number one thing, or what are the number one things that here in college we need? And I felt like what God said was biblical wisdom. And so today we're going to do a message that we're calling Wisdom If My Stuff Will Work. Yes? No? Maybe so? It worked about 5 minutes ago. There we go. Ha, there. Okay. Yes, okay. Alright, so wisdom. So we're doing a message today called Wisdom. And I gotta say that this message is going to take just about this long. I mean, the information's going to take about that long. But to do it, I gotta take a few detours and kind of circle around a little bit. So stick with me because we're going to be all over the place. And what is going on with this microphone? Anyways, so if we're talking about wisdom, we got to talk about Solomon. And Solomon was King David's son. King David was the king of Israel. He was one of the greatest kings that Israel ever had. They'll still tell you in Israel that David was the man. And so David had a son named Solomon. Now Solomon was not his oldest son, so he shouldn't have been the next king. But Solomon was the one that was most loved by God. So David said, hey, he's going to be the king whenever I die. So David gets old, he dies, he names Solomon king. Solomon becomes the king, but the problem is he's really, really young. A lot of Bible scholars said he's anywhere between 20 and like the single digits. And either way, that's really flipping young to be the king of all of Israel. And so Solomon's flipping out a little bit. And so he gives 1,000 burnt offerings to God, and then he goes to sleep that night, and God comes to him in a dream, and he says, hey, Solomon, I'll give you anything that you ask for. Now, if you want a great kingship, you ask for 3 things. You ask for money, you ask for a really long life, and you ask for all the people that don't like you to be dead. That's what you ask for. And so Solomon instead asks for a knowing heart. He said, God, I'm like a little child. Those were his exact words. He said, God, I'm like a little kid. I don't know what I'm doing here. Give me a knowing heart and an understanding heart so that I can know right from wrong and lead your people the way that you would have me lead them. Because who could lead your people by themselves? And God was so pleased with his answer. He said, not only am I going to make you the wisest person that ever walked the earth, I'm going to make you really rich. And if you continue to follow me, I'm going to give you a really long life too. A lot of Bible scholars say that Solomon is still the richest man who ever lived because he's way up there in the billions and was worth a lot. And so Solomon not only was rich and had the long life, but now he became the wisest man that ever lived. So Solomon had his hand in 3 books. He wrote Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon or Song of Songs, and that's the one you couldn't read till you were in high school because it's a little raunchy. And then there's Proverbs, which he didn't write all of it. There was a couple other people that did part of Proverbs, but the bulk of it is Solomon. So Solomon writes in Proverbs this one verse that's kind of the pinnacle verse for all of Proverbs. And Proverbs is the book on wisdom. And so this is going to be the pinnacle verse for us today. Fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. So fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge. Now we got to take another detour. Fear of the Lord is a term that really flipped me out forever because I thought that it meant, oh God, like that's what it was supposed to be. Fear of the Lord, the right translation of this, the most accurate translation is reverential awe. Is knowing that God is so amazing, so wonderful, so whoa, that you just can't help but worship him. So it's not this, oh, it's oh my gosh, God is so amazing. And that's what fear of the Lord is. So it's knowing God and following God. So what Solomon's saying here is knowing God is the foundation of true knowledge. And we're going to kind of explain why here. If we skip a little ahead in Proverbs, it goes, wisdom shouts in the street. She lifts her voice in the square. At the head of the noisy street she cries out. At the entrance of the gates in the city she utters her sayings. Oh, how long, O naive ones, will you love being simple-minded? And scoffers delight themselves in scoffing, and fools hate knowledge. Turn to my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit on you. I will make my words known to you. Now, this is the sentence I want to pay attention to. Behold, I will pour out my spirit on you. Now, a lot of translations will say, okay, I pour my spirit out on you, I pour my heart out on you, I pour my knowledge out on you, but the word right there is ruach. The original Hebrew word is ruach, which is the word they use for spirit. So what this is saying here is that wisdom is a spirit, or a spiritual thing, something that comes from God, directly from God. And so wisdom is something that comes from the Holy Spirit. So let's skip ahead a little bit in the Bible. We'll go to Matthew. And this is Jesus talking. He's a little ticked off at this crowd, and he says, "The Queen of Sheba will also stand up against this generation on Judgment Day and condemn it. For she came from a distant land to hear the wisdom of Solomon. Now someone greater than Solomon is here, but you refuse to listen." So what made Jesus greater than Solomon? Well, Solomon got his wisdom from God. Jesus is God, therefore Jesus is greater than Solomon. You see how this is starting to play out. So wisdom comes directly from God. Now that's why this verse is starting to make a little bit more sense. Fear of the Lord, knowing God, is the foundation of true knowledge. Okay? So if we already have this knowledge in us, how do we get a hold of it? Because God's filled us with the Holy Spirit. Now how do we access it? Jump a little ahead of Proverbs. See, we're jumping all over the place today. "My child, listen to what I say and treasure my commands. Turn your ears to wisdom and concentrate on understanding. Cry out for insight and ask for understanding. Search for them as you would for silver. Seek them like hidden treasures. Then you will understand what it means to fear the Lord. And you will gain knowledge of God. For the Lord grants wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding." Now, verse 3, cry out for insight. Ask for understanding. If we ask God for wisdom, all of a sudden things are going to start clicking. It's amazing. You start asking God, give me wisdom in this area, and then things just all of a sudden start making sense, and ideas start popping, and things start coming. God, give me wisdom in relationships. Give me wisdom in this. Give me wisdom in this. And all of a sudden the dots start being connected, and stuff starts flowing, and all of a sudden God's making a connection here, and he's filling us with wisdom and releasing the wisdom that's already in us. But we got to look at the second part of the verse here. Whoops. That says, "But fools despise wisdom and discipline." See, what God will do, and it's amazing, is if you ask for discernment, then God will surround you with discerning people. And all of a sudden you can take that in from them. You ask God for wisdom in your relationships, and all of a sudden he'll surround you with people who've been married for 40 years. And you ask him for wisdom in this or that, and all of a sudden he puts you in a situation where you got to exercise that wisdom, or you need that wisdom, or some kind of trial, or some kind of thing to push you. You see, so God fills you with the Holy Spirit, which is the wisdom inside of us. We ask for wisdom and God releases it, but then he gives us an opportunity to exercise it and work it out. When we first started C-Squared, I was asking God, please give me wisdom in this. I gotta have some wisdom. Please give me wisdom in doing C-Squared and in doing a ministry. And so all of a sudden I found myself at seminars and getting leadership DVDs and being surrounded by other pastors and people that wanted to pour into me and that I could learn from and I could grow from. And God was giving me ideas and things were flowing and things were popping and things were moving. And then all of a sudden I had these other things that helped me exercise that wisdom. And then I was able to grow my wisdom. And that's how we got to biblical wisdom. So fear of the Lord is the beginning of true knowledge. And we ask God for wisdom. And then God gives us the opportunities to exercise it. So my prayer for you guys is, God, please give them wisdom.